Good morning and welcome to the Planning Hearing Officer hearings for April 16th, 2014. My name is Laura Stotler and I'm serving as hearing officer today. We have one case and the relevant exhibits are posted on the panels located directly behind me. The agenda, staff reports, and recommendation for each of today's cases can be found on the city's website. A copy of the hearing procedures are available at the counter by the front door, and you'll also find agendas, copies of the staff reports, and speakers' request forms. Under the provisions of Title 30, Chapter 30.43 of the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance shall be granted if four required findings are present. Those findings are identified on the handout by the door and also in our code. These findings are also included as a discussion in the staff report. If the evidence presented on the application and at the hearing meets the criteria, then the planning hearing officer can either approve or impose conditions for approval on the case in question. If the findings of fact are not evident, then the request will be denied. Notification of this hearing was accomplished by the use of public notices, which were mailed to property owners and occupants located within 500 feet of the subject property. There's a sign physically posted on the site, and there's also an advertisement placed in the local newspaper and also posted on the city's website. Hearings will proceed as follows. I'll read a description of the requested entitlements. The case planner will then make a brief overview of the case, give an analysis, and make a recommendation. The applicant will then be asked to come forward, stating both name and address, and will be asked to present the case within a 15-minute time limit. Others in support of or in opposition to the application and interested parties will then be asked to come forward to speak, stating both name and address, and they will have a 3-minute time limit. Lastly, the applicant will be given the opportunity to make closing comments if desired in response to testimonies given, and they will have a 5-minute time limit. The hearing will be closed and the case taken under submission. After the hearing, the decision will be prepared in writing and will be in the form of a letter sent to the applicant and to all persons who've responded to the public notice, either by speaking here at this public hearing or those who have submitted written responses and provided their mailing address. The date of the decision will be the date appearing on the letter. However, if a decision is made at this hearing, the decision date will be today's date, and a 15-day appeal period will start today. Under the appeal provision of Title 30, Chapter 30.62 of the Glendale Municipal Code, the decision may be appealed to the Planning Commission within 15 days of the date of this decision. That would be the date on the letter. Anyone wishing to appeal may obtain forms and brochures on the procedures from the Permit Services Center located in room 101 of this building. And again, we have speakers' request forms, speaker cards that look just like this. So if you'd like to speak, please submit one of those today to our secretary. I would also like to inform everyone that the official proceedings of this hearing are being recorded as part of the public record. So for the case today, we have a variance case, PVAR 1400517, located at 318 Brockmont Drive. Applicant is Mark Holmes, LLC, and Michael J. Letts. The case planner is Brad Collin. This is an application for standards variance to allow a single-family dwelling to be reconstructed on a lot with less than 7,500 square feet to exceed the allowable floor area by 596 square feet, to allow 3-story home where 2 stories are allowed, to allow less than required driveway length of 1 foot 3 inches, to have a 10-foot wide 1-car garage where 12 feet is required, and a setback variance is to allow a street front setback of 1 foot 3 inches where 15 feet are required, and interior setbacks of 5 feet and 3 feet 8 inches where 10 feet are required. Again, this is located at 318 Brockmont in the R1R Restricted Residential Zone, Floor Area District 2. And with that, I'd like to ask the case planner to provide an overview.
Thank you, Ms. Stotler. As mentioned, the subject project is located at 318 Brockmont Drive, which is located in an R1R Restricted Residential Zone, Floor Area District 2. The subject property is approximately 5,880 square feet and is irregularly shaped. The lot has frontage on Brockmont Drive and slopes down from Brockmont with a series of terraces as the lot goes from north to south. The original house was built in 1959 and was damaged by fire in November of 2010. The damage was significant enough that the existing house could not be repaired. If the house could have been repaired at its previous location, it would have been allowed to keep its existing nonconformities without the variances. After the fire, the house was demolished down to the foundation in 2011. Only the foundation of the previous house and the swimming pool exist on the site currently. Previous house had nonconforming street front, interior setbacks, as well as the garage dimension and driveway distance. So the previous house did have some nonconformities as it stood or was previously constructed. The applicant is proposing to rebuild the house in a similar location to the previous residence, which includes utilizing the existing foundation walls, including foundation wall toward the front of the new house. The previous house was developed with a 2,270 square foot, two-story single-family residence with a two-car garage, as mentioned, built in 1959. The applicant is requesting 5 standards variances, 2 setback variances, as you had mentioned. Staff believes that the 4 findings can be made for each of these variances and is recommending approval based off the conditions of approval and is available for any questions.
I do want to add that we received a number of letters also. Let me just briefly go through them so you'll know whose comments I've read. We received an email from Laura Friedman, and she has some concerns with the findings. We have a letter that I've received from Terry Malloy at 320 Brockmont. And as part of this packet, I went out when I was visiting the site. I actually ran into the neighbors who wrote this letter, so I just want to disclose that. What I did was I was confirming the information that is contained in this. This is all part of the public record. So anybody's welcome to look at this. And what this is a series of pictures and description of the property and concerns that they were raising with the proximity of the proposed development, and then also concern with the location of the new driveway and the new garage. We've also received a letter from the owner at 321 Brockmont Drive with concerns related to the hillside development review policy and the comprehensive design guidelines. They were also concerned with the project, included pictures. And let me see if I have a name for you on this one. I do not have a name on this letter, but this was received. We also have Terry Malloy wrote an email, and this was actually written to our case planner, Brad Collin. It also gives the same information that was provided in that packet they submitted with pictures. This was just a written list of comments that they've had with the project. We have an email that was forwarded from the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association notifying the public of this meeting, and then also some concerns that they also had with the project. And it was a similar email from another one from Terry Malloy, also concerned with the project and setbacks. On April 6th, we received a letter from Meg Hayes. She urges that the codes be followed. We received an email from Carol Welling, also with concerns about the project, specifically with the design guidelines. We have another email from Carol Welling, concerned about variances. We have comments, then interdepartment comments that we've received from Building and Safety, just noting codes. Comments that we've received from Integrated Waste. They did not have a comment. Neighborhood Services didn't have any comments. Maintenance Services, the Urban Forester did not have any comments, so these are pretty standard. And then the Fire Department provided their standard comments. So with that, I'd like to call the applicant forward and ask him to provide his 15-minute presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Ms. Stotler. Thank you for the opportunity to present our proposal for the construction of a new home. My name is Michael Lutz. My address is 8282 White Oak Avenue, Suite 112, Rancho Cucamonga, California. Thank you for the opportunity to present our proposal for the construction of a new home at 318 Brockmont Drive, located in the R1R zone. The property in question was originally occupied by a home constructed in 1959 that was significantly damaged by fire in November 2010 and subsequently demolished to the foundation. Today, the lot is occupied by the foundations from the prior home, a swimming pool that has been closed and completely covered for health and safety reasons, and the concrete decking around the pool, all of which are still usable for reconstruction of the premises. The subject lot, a downslope lot on the south side of Brockmont Drive, was subdivided prior to 1959, and when developed, the lot was graded and terraced into two principal tiers separated by a 9-foot concrete block and stucco retaining wall that also extends continuously across the southern portion of 320 Brockmont Drive, the property immediately adjacent to the west of the subject property. The top tier, closest to Brockmont, encompasses nearly 2/3 of the lot area and is the location of the original foundations, the pool, and the concrete and brick deck. The lower tier, which is a landscaped lawn area, is situated approximately 35 feet below the Brockmont Road level. Subsequent to the property's subdivision and development in 1959, the City of Glendale updated its municipal and zoning codes, which included new development standards for the R1R zone, which, because of its size, resulted in the subject property falling below both the minimum required lot area and frontage required for new home construction, and thus has been recognized as a legal non-conforming lot. Given the 55-year existing terracing of the lot, the long-established nature and stability of the landscaped hillside and the surrounding properties both east and west, as well as downslope, our objective is to avoid the disruption and inconvenience that demolition and removal of the existing aesthetic and structural foundations and facilities and landscaping would involve if the property had to be reconstructed by removing those items and importing soil and engaging in a major demolition and full-blown grading operation. Because of the existing terracing, the current average slope of the lot is 28%, but principally only because the top tier of the lot, where the house and pool were located, has been built up with the aid of two separate retaining walls measuring 9 foot and 4 foot in height, which created a flat plane for the home and its primary outdoor entertainment area, including the pool and pool deck. Without the existing terracing, and given the 36-foot slope elevation change on the lot from Brockmont Drive to its southern boundary line, a lot depth averaging 80 foot, the original average slope of the lot would be approximately 42 to 45%. Mark Holmes has filed this application seeking approval to build a new 2,908 square foot, 3-story home with 2 one-car garages on the existing 5,880 square foot lot. This home would replace the previous home that was damaged by fire and subsequently demolished. We plan to build the home on the lot essentially within the same footprint of the prior home and utilizing much of the existing prior foundations located between the existing swimming pool and the street. Our use of significant portions of the existing foundation walls will be augmented where necessary with the addition of new foundation walls inside those that already exist to carry the bearing and shear load of the new construction on a foundation system which meets all current construction code standards. Because of the change in code standards since this parcel was originally subdivided and developed, our proposed new construction project requests approval of the following variances in order in order that we are in compliance with the current zoning requirements. 5 standards variances. First, construction of a single-family residence on a property with a lot area of 5,850 square feet, where a minimum of 7,500 square feet of land area would otherwise be required. Second, to permit a floor area ratio of 0.5 or 2,908 square feet, where a maximum FAR of 0.4 or 2,352 square feet would be allowed. To construct a 3-story home, 1 floor being below street grade and 2 stories above street grade, where a maximum of only 2 stories is allowed. Fourth, to provide a driveway length of 1 foot 3 inches for one of the 2 one-car garages, where 18 feet is required. Fifth, to construct 1 garage with interior width of 10 feet, where 12 feet of interior clear space is required, and 2 setback variances. First, to provide a 1-foot 3-inch street front setback utilizing the existing foundation for a portion of the home where 15 feet is required, and second, to provide interior setbacks of 5 feet and 3 feet 8 inches where 10 feet is required. The following is offered in response to the findings of fact required by the municipal code. First, how will the strict application of the provisions of any such ordinance result in practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinance? We are proposing to construct a single-family home on the same lot and in the same location where the previous home, damaged by fire and subsequently demolished, stood for approximately 52 years. The lot and home, both developed and constructed long prior to the current zoning code, were legally nonconforming in regard to a number of areas in the current zoning code regulations. Our objective is to avoid the major disruption and inconvenience that would otherwise be caused by having to engage in a wholesale demolition and regrading of the property on a long-established downslope hillside location situated in the middle of a built-out, long-standing community. To that end, we plan to locate the new home in essentially the same location and footprint as the previous home, situated between Brockmont Drive and the existing swimming pool. The lot, at 5,850 square feet, is below standard in size as compared to the minimum lot size that would now be required to construct a new single-family home on the property. This smaller, yet we forgot a word. The smaller lot that technically required lot sizes creates a hardship because the lot, which was occupied by a residential structure from 1959 until 2011, was subdivided prior to the adoption of the existing zoning code. And all of the adjacent properties are already developed, which makes it impossible to acquire additional land to increase the size of the lot area to meet code. Therefore, it was the change in the code that created the now below standard size and which necessitated this variance request to make proper use of the property. The subject lot is the smallest lot in land area of all those lots along Brockmont Drive and is the smallest out of all 65 lots that were included in the 500-foot radius area for which notices for this hearing were sent. In fact, all lots within the 500-foot radius, with the exception of one other, located at 326 Kempton, exceed the minimum land area standard. Due to the lot's below standard land area, the size of the home that can be built on the lot is also reduced in relation to the size of other homes existing along Brockmont, as well as within the 500-foot notice area and throughout the general area. Not all homes on Brockmont or throughout the area have yet been built to a size that maximizes their FAR in relation to their lot size, but the opportunity still exists for virtually all property owners to expand their existing homes or build a new home at a size that exceeds 3,500 square feet. Therefore, the analysis should not be what the size is of presently existing houses, but what is their potential size if remodeled or reconstructed to allowable sizes under the current code. As a case in point regarding potential size of structures in relation to the FAR standard, simply looking at the 4 lots immediately adjacent or contiguous to the subject property, they could be remodeled or rebuilt to sizes of 5,510, 4,048, 6,647, and 7,565 square feet, in comparison to the 2,908 square foot house that we are seeking to construct. Despite the fact that those adjoining houses are all being underutilized today, their potential clearly exists today for each of them to be materially expanded whenever the owner or subsequent owner so chooses. Conversely, the subject property has been significantly disadvantaged in its ability to ever size match its neighbors by the adoption of the current FAR standard, and is virtually a singular example of a home that would have to remain depressed in size due to the current zoning code standard that was adopted after the property was originally subdivided and developed. While it may seem to some that a builder's request for approval of a square footage allowance that exceeds the current FAR standard is a disregard for the city's ordinances, just the opposite is true. The real purpose of the variance procedure is to root out the potential injustices and unfairness and inequities that may be created when ordinances and standards are changed that detrimentally impact a property by changes in ordinances and development standards, and to help find ways to provide like-kind treatment under those same ordinances for the newly disadvantaged property relative to the universe of properties around it that can meet the adopted standards. We're proposing the construction of a new 2,908 square foot home, which is 556 square feet above the FAR standard of 2,352 square feet in relation to the below standard land area of 5,880 square foot parcel. The requested square footage allowance is comparable with other homes along Brockmont and in the immediate neighborhood. Even after approval, it will still be below the maximum allowable square footages of each of the other properties surrounding it. But it will more closely match the neighborhood standard than the original 2,200 square foot construction. One of the goals of the code is to standardize the sizes of homes in a general sense without leaving any of them significantly undersized or oversized in relation to each other. Again, the analysis must address the potential size, not the presently existing sizes of the 50 to 60-year-old homes. Some of them have been seriously undermaintained in terms of their condition. The highest and best use of each of the adjoining properties is the ability to construct to what constitutes an approximate maximum building size allowed by their FAR, rather than the homes staying in their present undersized configurations and dimensions. To achieve the 2,908 square foot, we are seeking approval of, and we are proposing to build a 3-story home on a lot that has a current calculated average slope of 28%, using the confines of the existing foundation that sits between Brockmont and the existing swimming pool. The home is designed to be 2 stories at the street level, consistent with many homes up and down Brockmont, and a total of 3 stories by utilizing the area below the street of the house, which will be on the same level as the already existing swimming pool. The height of the proposed home at 33 feet is below the allowable maximum building height of 35 foot, and the proposed home will be 22 feet 6 inches at street level to its ridge line. By making use of the existing foundations within the graded pad to prevent major construction disturbances over a prolonged time period constitutes a legal hardship because the slope within the foundation and existing wall footprints as they exist will not exceed 40%, which is similar to the slopes on the neighboring properties. Before the foundation and retaining wall construction, the slope on the subject property would have been approximately 42 to 45%, meaning that the property would have been automatically eligible for a measurably higher FAR and consequentially increased square footage of the structure. By using the existing foundation and retaining walls in the reconstruction of the property, the allowable FAR is affected as compared to the natural slope, along with the allowable calculated building pad area. In designing the home, we also took great care that we did not impact the view corridors of the neighboring property north of the subject property, as well as working to minimize the potential impact on the privacy of the properties immediately east and west of the subject. In that regard, the 3rd story consists of only the owner's master bedroom and bath, and a small rooftop deck which can be accessed only from the master bedroom and not from the rest of the house. The planned home is very much in keeping with the character and massing of other already existing homes along both the upslope and downslope sides of Brockmont, as well as within the general vicinity. And at 2,908 square feet will also fit very well with the allowed size of homes constructed in the future. We're also requesting a driveway length of 1 foot 3 inches for one of the 2 one-car garages. The location of the affected garage is established by the prior footprint of the home, based on use of the existing foundation and the location of the previous home. Our approach has been to work within the confines of the existing foundation while trying to make them meet the code standards where feasible. Where they don't, they will have to be augmented to meet the code. While the one garage will not meet the required driveway length, it will meet the required interior clear depth. Additionally, the second one-car garage will meet the required 18-foot driveway length. We're also asking for a reduced garage interior width of 10 feet for the one-car garage with the shortened driveway. This hardship is caused by the narrower, non-conforming width of the existing lot at 70 feet and the reuse of the existing foundation. In order to conform to the existing drive approach and the existing foundations, the only way to achieve the 18-foot driveway length for the second one-car garage was to separate the layout of the two garages while ensuring that the second one-car garage meets not only the required driveway length, but also the required clear interior width and depth. Finally, we are requesting a street front setback variance to allow a portion of the home to be 1 foot 3 inches with interior setbacks of 5 feet and 3 feet 8 inches. Strict application of the zoning ordinance would create a hardship and practical difficulty in relation to being able to use the existing foundation area in the tightly constrained space between the street and the existing pool and retaining wall locations. Compliance with the code requirements for street and interior setbacks would otherwise necessitate total demolition of all on-site facilities and foundations and a complete regrading of the site to enable the construction of a functional residence, all of which would create a major disruption and nuisance to the surrounding property owners and neighborhood, as well as greatly increasing the length of the construction period and making the costs of construction nearly prohibitive. Use of the existing foundations with the requested setback variances will result in a finished result that is similar to the existing condition of many homes along both the upslope and downslope sides of Brockmont Drive, as well as along Kempton Road, the street immediately north and upslope of Brockmont. Second, what exceptional circumstances or conditions apply to the property involved or to the intended use of the development of the property that do not apply generally to other property in the same zone or neighborhood? We are proposing to construct a new home within the confines of and by making use of the existing foundations of the prior home that was damaged by fire and subsequently demolished. As previously discussed, we are unable to bring the lot into conformance relative to lot area and utilization of the existing foundations without a major demolition and reconstruction of the lot. We have to build within a tightly confined area between the street and the existing structures on the lot, which necessitates our request for relief from the front and interior setbacks, driveway length, and interior width of one of the one-car garages. Our request for the FAR and third-story variances are predicated on the non-conforming status of the lot relative to the zoning code, and for relief from the disadvantaged position of the subject lot relative to virtually all other properties in its general vicinity, resulting from the zoning standards adopted subsequent to the original subdivision and development. Third, why will granting the variance not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the property or improvements in such zone or neighborhood in which the property is located? The subject property has been vacant since the demolition of the fire-damaged structure. Construction of a new residence on the property built to current building code requirements will eliminate any unsafe conditions in the property and negate the potential of the property being used by local children as a convenient hangout, as well as the visual blight from the fenced but unused property. Approval of the requested standards and setback variances will not set a precedent because the substandard width and area of the subject property in comparison to others in the area, and therefore will not be contrary to the objectives of the zoning ordinance. Improvement of the property will be a substantial value enhancement to the neighborhood as compared to the existing condition, and therefore will also be a benefit to the adjoining properties and the neighborhood, and will materially increase and add value to the tax base of which the city, its schools, and its police and fire departments will obtain a direct financial benefit. And finally, why the granting of the variance will not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance. The proposed home will be constructed using the existing foundations and within the limits of the footprints of the original home that existed on the property for approximately 52 years. Given the existing physical constraints on the site and the limited area available for construction, the requested standards and setback variances would not be contrary to the objectives of the ordinance, one of which is to make the property productive rather than sitting vacant and unimproved and visually blighted, and another is to provide valuable housing stock to the Glendale community, which is one of the goals of the general plan. While the proposed home is slightly larger than the zoning code allows, the intent of the variance process is to provide for equitable relief for singular properties that have become disadvantaged by adopted ordinances and standards, as long as it can be demonstrated that approval of such requested variances is based upon specific and uncommon circumstances as compared to other properties, and that it would not create a precedent for wholesale disregard of the established ordinances and standards. I don't know how much time I have left, but I know that the staff report had not addressed the additional requirements that need to be met in seeking the variance in the R1R zone, which is the
3011-040
Hillside Development Review
District
Policy.
Additional ROS and R1R development standards.
Yes.
Correct.
If I could address those briefly, it'd probably be another 4 or 5 minutes.
Sure.
Okay. There are 5 standards that have to be met in order to qualify here again for the requested variances. First, is development in keeping with the design objectives of the Glendale Municipal Code, the Hillside Design Guidelines, and the Landscape Guidelines for Hillside Development? The answer is yes. It is in keeping with the objectives of the Hillside Residential Zone and is replacing the residential structure that originally stood on the lot until being demolished after being damaged by fire. The subject property has a lot size that falls below the current lot area standard required for the R1R zone, and when originally developed, it was terraced to the hillside, both of which conditions have placed significant constraints on the construction of a new residential structure without approval of the variances requested herein. Second, is development compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size, scale, bulk, mass, roofline orientation, setback, and site layout? Again, yes. While the new residential structure is oversized in relation to the current FAR standard due to the small size of the lot when compared to all others along Brockmont Drive, yet it is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. Its size will fall within the mid-range of homes within the immediate vicinity, and it is not out of character for the neighborhood, and it is comparable to what could be constructed or smaller than what could be constructed on every lot along Brockmont Drive, except for this singular instance along Brockmont of a lot that does not meet the current lot area standard. The scale, bulk, mass, and roof orientation of the proposed new structure are all similar to other residences along both the north and south sides of Brockmont Drive. Additionally, the requested setbacks within the existing foundation footprint are similar to setbacks found on numerous other homes along both the upslope and downslope sides of Brockmont Drive and Kempton Road, the road that's immediately north and upslope of Brockmont. Third, does the site plan show preservation of prominent natural features, native vegetation, and open space in a manner compatible with the surrounding neighborhood, minimizing alteration of terrain necessary for development? Again, the answer is yes. The site plan shows and the planned construction projects the retention of all existing features of the lot with no anticipated on-site grading nor any disturbance of the existing established hillside condition, with the exception of some landscape updating and reconstruction of a minor retaining wall on the lower tier at the very southern portion of the lot. That wall happens to be built with its 2 or 3 stacked railroad ties. So our intent would be to take that out, replace that, and refinish that area. Fourth, does the site plan for development of the property on steep slopes take into account the visual impact on surrounding properties? Yes. The primary views in this specific vicinity are to the south, taking in downtown Glendale and the city of LA in the distance. Particular care was taken to ensure that the new residential structure would not negatively impact the views from the residents immediately north of the subject property. The height of the proposed structure above street grade is approximately 22 foot 6 inches, and this falls below the grade at which the entry, walkway, and entertainment deck of the home on the north side of Brockmont sit, which are at approximately 24 feet and 29 feet, respectively, above Brockmont Drive. Views from this home will continue to be from a height that is above the ridge line of the new proposed residential structure on the subject property. Additionally, the requested third story has been designed so that it sits on the eastern side of the new residential structure to avoid the potential of negatively impacting the residents adjacent to the subject property's western boundary relative to privacy, light, air, ventilation, scenic vistas, and shade and shadowing effects. And finally, is the architectural style and architectural elements of the infill development compatible with the surrounding neighborhood? Again, yes. There is no singular theme or style along Brockmont Drive, but rather what exists is an eclectic blend of mutually complementary architectural styles. Our objective was to develop an exterior architectural style in keeping with the more recent construction in the hillside area that tends more toward Spanish and Tuscan themes. Given the tight lot constraints, we recognized that we'd be unable to achieve the more sprawling nature of a Spanish theme, so we are pursuing the Tuscan design submitted herewith. We are continuing to work on the elevation and actually have finished that up with the intent of achieving a contemporary streetscape design resembling a reclaimed two-story cobble-clad Tuscan farmhouse with first-floor additions and varying roof lines at the street level. The exterior design will also incorporate the use of travertine-style tile, large wall planes completed in warm yet bold colors, more expansive glazing, and some metalwork window coverings and awnings expressed in a pergola design, all aimed at achieving a very contemporary appearance. With that, I thank you for your time, your patience, and forward to speaking with you after we hear some comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Next, I have Arnold Graham. Okay. Okay.
In the interim, would it be possible to leave the file?
Okay, you need to speak into the microphone, please.
Request a look at, peruse the file of items that have been submitted since they are.
You may stand right here, and you're welcome to look at them. But I don't want to leave the dais in case I need to respond to
Where
it.
would you like to have me do that?
You're welcome to come right up here and take a look.
I don't want to hold up the meeting.
Okay. With that, I would like to call forward Francis and Catherine Malloy.
Hi, good morning, Laura. How are you?
Morning.
Brad, good to see you. My name is Francis Malloy. It's my wife, Catherine. We've lived at 320 Brockmont Drive for the last 16 years. We've been residents of Glendale for 20 years, homeowners in Glendale for 20 years. Our property is directly to the west of the proposal. While there are 7 variances that have been recommended here, recommended to be approved, we have issues and we oppose 3 of them. The first one, allow a 3rd level where only 2 levels are allowed. The previous home had 2 levels. The slope of 318 Brockmont is 28%, which is significantly below the 40% slope required for a 3rd level. There's not a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship imposed at the 2-level standard. The previous home was 2 levels. Just because the home burned down should not be the basis for allowing a replacement home to be a full level or nearly 30% larger. The use of the existing pad, which is being allowed by virtue of the setback variances, is a huge financial benefit to the builder. And is being allowed because its denial would create a hardship. It cannot now be used as a hardship to support a 3rd level. The granting of this variance will be materially detrimental to my welfare and those of the immediate neighbors on the east and south, as this oversized structure will infringe and violate our privacy. The 3rd level exposes my pool area and rear living space both in sight and living proximity. The granting of this variance is in direct opposition to the ordinance, which is to ensure that structures be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size, scale, bulk mass, and roofline orientation, all of which the original structure did. It also violates the hillside development review policy that stipulates site plans for development of property on steep slopes shall take into account the visual impact on surrounding properties, the visual impact being to us a violation of our privacy while looking into our backyard. 2, allow for an FAR of 50% where 40% is standard. This represents an additional 596 square feet of floor area. There is not a practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship imposed at the 40% FAR standard. The 40% FAR standard yields a 2,352-foot square home where 2,270 square foot or a 39% FAR home had been. So the previous home had certainly fit in to that standard. Also, the average size of the homes on this side of Brockmont, all of which are here, thank you very much, is 2,245 square feet, which represents an FAR of 19%. I should say that I took Mark Holmes' paper and just did that math, so you can check that. I have it here as part of my exhibit as well. The standard yields a home larger in square foot and FAR than the homes on either side. Again, just because the home burned down should not serve as grounds to build a new home nearly 30% larger. The granting of this variance will be materially detrimental to my welfare and those of the immediate neighbors on the east and south, as this oversized structure will infringe and violate our privacy. The granting of this variance is in direct opposition to the ordinance, which is to ensure that structures be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size, scale, bulk mass, and roofline orientation. I know I've repeated that, but I can't say it enough. The third issue is to provide interior setbacks of 5 feet and 3 foot 8 inches, specifically the 3 foot 8 inch setback on the west side. The granting of this variance will be materially detrimental to my welfare and safety, as it would allow for the westerly garage to be 19 feet long. This creates an open driveway that runs less than 5 feet from the wall of our master bedroom. And as you can see by that picture, it's a very, very, very tight on that west side. And that this variance would leave us vulnerable to a number of things. Without setbacks, there's absolutely no buffer, and the potential for disaster is great, as any slight error would land a misguided vehicle into our master bedroom or into our pool. It leaves my home, pool, and backyard vulnerable to catastrophic vehicle damage and exposed automobile fumes. This area had previously been walled off by the garage wall, as the garage was much closer to the street. We would be open to allow for this setback if the west garage was built closer to the street as the east garage is planned, or if it was similar in position to the original two-car garage. This would create a buffer for us and also provide more living space for the builder. So, in closing, the issue is very simply that these variances do not meet all 4 required findings of fact and should not be granted. The granting of these variances is in direct opposition to the ordinance, again, which is to ensure that structures be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood in terms of size, scale, bulk mass, roofline orientation. It also violates the hillside development review policy that stipulates site plans for development of property on steep slopes shall take into account the visual impact on surrounding properties. The granting of these variances would also be detrimental to the well-being of my family by exposing us to potential vehicle accidents and fumes. Appreciate your time and consideration and hope that you'll take an objective look at the impact and damage that granting these variances will have on our home at 320 Brockmont. Our life and our life's work are in this home. We've endured a fire, demolition. We're prepared to endure construction next door. We want a home next door, but we're not going to be deterred in standing up for our rights, privacy, safety, and indeed our way of life. So thank you very much.
And I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
So on the west side setback for the driveway, this area, it's you're not necessarily opposed to the setback if they move the driveway, the garage up. Is that, am I getting that right?
That's right.
Right.
And that's
right.
where it used to be?
That's where it
for
used
the old
to be.
home like
right.
that?
And right there, that exposed area right there, it provides absolutely no buffer to that wall, and right next to it, which is our master bathroom, which is within, and bedroom, which is within 5 feet.
Okay.
Also, after...
Could you please speak into the microphone?
Sorry. I'd like to leave this, and I'll provide an electronic copy, but this is a revised letter along with a grid outlining where we believe the ordinances have missed in terms of finding of fact. It's also a hard copy, which you have, of the presentation I left Brad on Monday. Okay. Can I leave this with you? Or?
Yes, I take it right.
Thanks so much for your time.
And thank you. Thank you. And next, I would like to call forward Jim, I think it's Kinsman, followed by Gary Olive.
Hi, Jim Kussman, 400 Kempton Road, Glendale, 40-year resident of Glendale. I think I've been transported into an alternate universe here. All these people want another house built there. I don't think there's a question about it. It's been a huge problem since it burned down, coyotes, kids, whatever it is. If you drive down Brockmont, all the houses that go down the hill have one story at the street. The big issue here is the third story, in my opinion. If you look at the rendering that's posted at the lot, it shows a tiny corner of their house. This bedroom that he wants to add, it looms above that. It's completely out of character for the neighborhood. And I've been to a number of these meetings where character's a big deal, and does it blend in, and does it fit, and all the other mumbo jumbo that goes with this. This doesn't. The setbacks are the same. And here's another thing. I mean, I'm not an English major, but we're talking about building a brand new house, not reconstructing. I keep hearing this. He says reconstruct, build on the existing. It's not the existing house. It's not close to the existing house. Here in your findings, proposing to reconstruct. You're not reconstructing that house. That means building it like it was. Reconstruct. You're talking about a whole new deal. And it's out of character. You know, lop off the third floor and be done with it. Thank you.
Okay. And I'll just provide some clarification as far as the legal nonconforming. If a home was rebuilt exactly the way it was originally approved because of a fire and damaged, you can maintain nonconforming rights and rebuild it within 2 years of the date of damage. So if it was damaged in November 2010, they had till November 2012 to rebuild the home. They wouldn't have to have a hearing or anything else. Part of the reason they're here is because they're past the damage time. It is new construction. We do acknowledge that. I mean, even the applicant has said their purpose in constructing or in making this proposal is they do want to use the existing foundations. So that's just to clarify that it is new construction, although it might say reconstruction in the staff report, and we might call it reconstruction. Yeah, the city does consider this new. Okay, next I would like to call forward Mr. Gary, maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong, Gary Alev? Nave, it's sorry.
No problem.
Nave. And then he'll be followed by Donald Zachary.
I'm Gary Nave. I live at 321 Brockmont Drive, the northern neighbor. I agree with the redevelopment or the new construction of a residence on that property. I disagree with two of the variants, which is floor area ratio and the height variance. Again, the findings cannot be made for those two issues. In an attempt to bring levity or just to bring the attention to some of the neighbors, I went out and walked the neighborhoods and just sought input. And the input I got, the closer I was to that home, the more vehement and more denial of this. The further I got away in the 300 square foot area, it became less of an issue, but they were still against granting all 7 variances. We have a small petition here signed by some of the people that are not here and some that are here that want that house reconstructed to the similar like that it was prior. So I'd like to just submit this.
Okay. Thank you.
Another quick question: if I'm going to work on potential development of my home, I better go reinsure it for higher value. I've just become more of a rich man. Thank you.
Donald Zachary, followed by Sheldon Phillips.
Good morning, Ms. Stadler. Thank you for the time. My name is Donald Zachary. I live at 371 Brockmont Drive. We've owned the home since 1987. And before that, we lived in another area of Glendale. I wanted to address 2 of the required findings of Section 30.43.043, whether the variance is required by an unnecessary hardship and whether the granting of the variance will materially be detrimental to the neighborhood. First of all, Mr. Lutz complains that he has the smallest lot on the block, and therefore he needs to be able to build it to the potential size. So his argument essentially is, I want to build the first McMansion on the block because other people might decide to upgrade. In my business, we call that a hypothetical. There's no evidence that anybody is planning to build anything approaching the size of this home. Secondly, Mr. Lutz purchased a lot of a certain size, presumably knowing what the restrictions were. It's like buying a Ford, and now he wants the city not only to approve, but help him build a BMW. That's not what he bought into. He knew what the lot was. He knew what the requirements were. He should live by that. Similarly, it is not a hardship to build a 2-story home. That's what was there before. And Mr. Lutz misspoke when he said there are other 2-story homes on Brockmont. I drive that street every day of my life. There are 2, maybe 1.5. The house directly across the street from us that was built in 1937 is 2 stories. And the house directly below us on the same north side of the street is built above ground because we're on a slope, as my house is. There's a garage right on the bottom level, and there's a room down there. Maybe they call that a second story. I think it's a 1-story house. It's built above. So I don't think that there is any hardship in building a house that will conform to the requirements of the current code. Secondly, the impact on the neighborhood. That home in that picture behind you, I think, illustrates it very well. The 3rd story it's the one over your right shoulder that shows the 3rd story. That simply is not in keeping with the neighborhood. We have 1-story houses. We do not have anything of that size, and it will materially distract from the beauty of our neighborhood, the design of our neighborhood, and the enjoyment of our neighborhood. This variance does not meet the requirements of the code. I thank you for your time.
Thanks. Sheldon Phillips, followed by Nareg Amirian.
Yes, hi. Sheldon Phillips. My wife and I live at 301 Brockmont Drive, just north of the subject property. We purchased our home in August of 2011. We actually had first considered the home in 2010 prior to the unfortunate fire at the subject property. One thing Mr. Lutz fails to acknowledge is that this site is directly within our view that we have from our property. And I have an exhibit that I've not submitted, but I'd be happy to hand some photographs.
Thank you.
Of the property prior to its demolition, and some subsequent views of superimposed what the original structure would have been, the roof line. And even with the previous home in its intact state, we would have had a view of the ridge line, a very nice view of Griffith Park and the Hollywood Hills. In a subsequent view, I've superimposed what the new construction would be at the 3-story level, and it completely obliterates our view of the ridge line. We live on actually one of the largest lots in the neighborhood, but the smallest home. And one thing that I'd like to bring to attention regarding the floor area ratio, as Mr. Lutz stated, that none of the properties are taking advantage of the maximum floor area ratio. But he's neglecting the fact that given the slope setback standards and some of the new building standards, it's impossible. We live in a 1,300 square foot home, and we're having a really hard time being able to maximize or even build anything on, considering the maximum height of retaining walls and the upslope setbacks and such. So just wanted to bring that to the attention of the Planning Commission. What some of the other speakers have brought up regarding the charm of the neighborhood, I wholeheartedly agree with. It is a very eclectic neighborhood. We were drawn to the neighborhood for that very reason. As I mentioned, the home burned down while we were in doing due diligence of buying our home. And as a matter of fact, I had called the city back in March of 2011 to find out what the condition would be regarding any future plans. And I did speak with somebody named Rother in the planning office and was assured that it would only be possible to build within the confines of the existing home, including the square footage. And that actually influenced our due diligence in the purchase of the property that we now live at. And it has come to my attention that there was also a letter back in 2011 that I believe I have, that was written to Councilwoman Friedman and Mrs. Malloy, stating the very thing, that not one additional square foot could be added to the existing house, and that was written by Howard Mollis, principal planner with the City of Glendale.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Narig Amirian. I am the resident and the owner of 1627 Arbor. We're just directly to the south of the property in question here. We actually share a property line where the railroad ties are and where the I guess the south end of the foundation is.
So your house is one of these?
Yeah, that's mine right here. Yeah. So I'd just like to, first and foremost, thanks for hearing us out. I'd like to reiterate what the rest of the community is saying. Looking at what the proposed design is, I don't think any of us are against a home being there. We think it makes sense for a home to be there. But looking at what's being proposed, it seems very out of place to what the neighborhood actually looks like. I personally don't see any way that there's a difficulty or an unnecessary hardship that's being that exists here for recreating what was already there. Another concern that we have is, again, like the Malloys had said, there's an issue with that third story. We knew when we purchased our home about a year ago that there was a house that was supposed to be up there, and that we have some amount of privacy based off of the trees and the foliage that lines our backyard and in between the property lines. Putting a third story there ends up elevating that and it makes us right in a fishbowl. They're looking right into our backyard and right into our home. And that's a bit of an invasion of privacy from our perspective. And I would imagine has a detrimental impact on the value of our home. If we ever decided to sell, someone's going to walk into our backyard and see that there's a monstrosity of a home above us that's looking right into the backyard. I also would like to point out that the argument that just because other homes in the vicinity in the area haven't taken advantage of the maximum size of the house based off the FAR, it seems a little disingenuous to me. The point isn't for us to maximize that. I don't think anybody here is going to be demolishing their homes and building new homes, even if the city would allow it, just because it's prohibitively expensive. Just because this house unfortunately burned down, I don't think that's a blank slate to give folks, to come here and to build a huge home. Thanks.
Thanks. Next, I'd like to call forward Guillaume Lemoyne, followed by Philip Keller.
Good morning. My name is Guillaume Lemoyne. I live at 300 Brockmont, which is on the east side of the property in question. My wife submitted a letter, and you have. I don't think I need to resubmit that. And we both in agreement we would like to see a home being built in this empty lot. But because of the increase of the FAR to 50 and adding a third floor, basically the increase of the FAR resulting in the increasing of the size of the house, and providing a third floor, we find this third floor we are really against it, basically, because it's going to create a canyon-like feeling to that corridor. And most of the homes on Brockmont and Kempton have a very low profile. Even if there are 2 stories, there is a 2 stories, 2 doors up, that is, the first story is actually sunken down, and it looks like a 1.5. There's a 2-story below that was mentioned before. Even on Kempton, they are mostly 1 story. My house is actually below street level. And we also have a significant neighborhood. There are about 5 homes in this neighborhood in less than 300 feet that are probably qualified for a Mill Act or National Historical Monument. So it's a significant neighborhood, and we would like to see this neighborhood to keep that appearance. And I have a couple of details regarding the setbacks, and I would like to bring my support to the Malloy in order to bring that garage forward and not expose a corner bedroom and bathroom there, the corner. It make them very vulnerable, and I think it's not necessary to move the garage back like it is on the plan there. On my side, I have right now property line to the pool deck 3 feet and 2 inches. On their plan it's 5 feet. I would like to make sure they are actually moving that wall 5 feet. And also there is a cantilever from the pool deck all the way to the property line, like above the property line actually. And I would like to see this cantilever removed to retain this 5 feet, this proposed 5 feet. I'm not against a variance on this 5 feet. When this house caught on fire, the firemen had some problems to walk down this 3 feet corridor in order to access the bottom of the house. So it's not only a variance issue, but a safety issue. I would like to give you those photos of the setback.
Thank you.
Also, on the most recent home built on the street was at 360, which is a little bit down the slope on Brockmont. And even this house was asked to keep that low profile, and half of the house is sunken down as well. So you give actually almost half a story above the street level. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Next up, Philip Keller, followed by Jennifer Freeman.
Good morning to the staff and to the planning hearing officer. My name is Philip Keller, and I'm a board member of the Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association, and I serve as its representative for the Design Review Board and Planning Department boards. I'm here today to express our association's concerns with the proposed project before you, located at 318 Brockmont Drive, and specifically why we feel it should not be granted all of its variances that have been requested. As you know, as stated in the Glendale Municipal Code, a variance may be granted only if all 4 findings of fact can be made for each of the specific variance requests. It is our opinion that the findings of fact cannot be made for at least 2 of the project's proposed variance requests. Number 1, the request to grant a variance to exceed the allowable FAR by nearly 24% or almost 600 square feet is not justified and cannot meet the finding of fact in the Muni Code, which states the strict application of the provisions of any such ordinance would result in the practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship inconsistent with the general purposes and intent of the ordinances. It is not a hardship for this developer for the proposed project to be limited to 2,270 square feet. The size of the previous house at this location, when it was there, was still on the larger end of homes in the area, and that is not a hardship. Number 2, the request to grant a variance to build a 3-story home with 2 of these stories proposed to be above street level is also plainly not justified. Again, citing the same example above with the city code, it is not a hardship to be limited to 2 stories, which is the existing code, which is the prevailing character of the street, which would still afford the developer a fair-sized home. There are no 2-story homes on the downslope side of Brockmont Drive with 2 stories being above the street level. It doesn't exist. That's the look of the street. Furthermore, if the applicant were just to eliminate the upper floor of the house of the 3rd story, that would reduce the project to around 2,337 square feet, which would still be larger than the original demolished home, and we feel would be fair and would be one of the most larger homes of the 20 homes located in the 300 to 400 block of Brockmont Drive, with a median average 2,191 square foot, and it would also come in below the 0.4 FAR down to 0.397, which we think is fair, very fair. In our opinion, there is no reasonable way for the applicant to claim that the denial of the variances for larger FAR in a 3rd story would cause practical difficulties or unnecessary hardship. As addressed in the municipal code, the hillside FAR limit and restriction against 3-story houses are purposefully designed to protect these hillside neighborhoods and should not be circumvented. We therefore request that the variance request for these 2 points be denied. Northwest Glendale Homeowners Association encourages the developer to revisit their design and ultimately return to build a great home to fill in this vacant lot. We support the design aesthetic and the use of the quality materials which they have laid out in the initial design proposal. However, we feel that the final design needs to be one that is more harmonious and compatible to the neighborhood in scale and massing, and is more respectful of the quality of life of its neighbors with its potential visual impact. Thank you.
Thank you. Jennifer Freeman, please. Followed by Suzanne Zachary. And this is the last card I have, so if there's anybody else who wishes to speak, please submit a card. Thanks.
Hi, Jennifer Freeman. I'm at 330 Brockmont, which is 2 doors to the west. I'm not so good at this. And I will be quite honest with you. I am assuming that some of the developers have probably been looking at our home to see what they can get away with this new home. Ours is one of the larger homes. It is a little bit newer. But even so, the lot is significantly larger, and we are still at a sight line. Our first floor actually drops below street level as well, so the elevation is still, I think it might be one of the taller ones, but we're still at a story or a story and a half, so we do not come far above street level. As you're hearing time and time again, the primary concern is the expansion of the FAR. We want a home here. When the coyotes moved in, my son was about a year old. He was coyote bait. We want something there. We don't want it to continue to be a safety issue, a safety hazard. We want something there. We need something that fits with the neighborhood. The lot size is smaller. I think the lot size, just about anywhere you go, is going to determine the size of a home that will work there, regardless of what the lot sizes are around it. The lot size on this one is a little bit smaller. Thus, the home is going to be potentially a little bit smaller than maybe what is around it. It still needs to fit with the neighborhood. It still needs to be compatible. And we have a real problem with that third floor and the way that that's going to come up significantly above what everything else is on that side of the street as you go down on the downslope. So thank you very much.
Okay. And Suzanne Zachary.
Thank you. My name is Suzanne Zachary. I live at 371 Brockmont Drive. And I agree with the comments of my neighbors, but I do want to address one thing that I don't think has been specifically, pointed out, is I am talking about the actual design of the home. I'm against the third story, etc., but it's designed as a Tuscan farm home. Well, if you look at our street, there is nothing remotely close to a Tuscan farm home on our street or in the surrounding area. We are predominantly Spanish and mid-century in design, and I feel that the design of this home, in addition to all the variances, etc., but the actual appearance of the home is completely incompatible with our street, and it will stick out like a sore thumb. So I'm opposed to its design as well as some of the variances.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item who hasn't already spoken? Right. With that, I'd like to call the applicant forward, and I guess it might be the applicant or Mr. Graham for the rebuttal.
Thank you, Ms. Stadler. My name is Arnold Graham. My address is 500 North Brand, Suite 1030 in Glendale. I represent the applicant in this matter. I've given to Mr. Collins a thumb drive of photographs and would like to address several of the points that were raised by some of the folks who are in opposition here. As a first item, in a general sense, this lot is undersized, as Mr. Lutz said, because of the effect of a change of the zoning ordinance. And the purpose of the variance process is to try to equalize. Many people, and I understand that this is an established neighborhood in many respects, but one cannot overlook the fact that this residential area also has the potential for an increase in size. And so that cannot be overlooked in this analysis. And in that regard, the gentleman, didn't catch his name, but the one who talked about the McMansioning of the neighborhood by this project, a 2,900 square foot house is not a McMansion by most people's definition, and if it is, he should have candidly acknowledged that he lives in an almost 3,300 square foot McMansion. So it takes on a context of a NIMBY. It may happen, but not in my backyard. And all of the evidence is, including the photographs, some of which I will go through here, show the eclectic neighborhood. You have the Kempton houses up above. You have the houses on the north side of Brockmont there is no common style, as it were. You have the young woman at 300 Brockmont who spoke about the height concern that she had. But Brad, if you could pull up the photo that references 300 Brockmont. Oh, no, I'm sorry.
That looks pretty
two doors to
low
the
to me.
west. This young lady, what's your address? 330, I'm sorry. Three 330. It should be 330 Brockmont. They're all labeled by number.
You're gonna flip it, we'll be fine.
If you put them in list form, they will be flipped. Encouragement. Comment on my technical skills. In any regard, the house at 330 Brockmont, it may technically be one story, but the point of the ridge, the peak of the ridge, will be at or higher than the ridge line on the subject property. It may be configured as one story. Can you find it, Brad? That's the photograph.
Level. It goes like that. That's why it.
In any regard, Mr. Collins will find it, I believe. 330. And if you draw into the peak of the roof on the left-hand side, you will see its height. And you compare that to the relative height of the proposed construction, you will find it to be very similar in height. Also, Mr. On the upper left-hand side, you can see the peak of that roof.
Okay.
And that is a height of approximately 24 feet above the street level. If Brad would go to the photograph that refers to 372 Brockmont. Over and over again, folks have said that there are no two stories in the neighborhood. That, to me, looks like a two-story house.
The window is mentioned, it was 1937 it was built.
Regardless of the year it was built, it is two stories.
We acknowledge that.
Could we not have catcalls from the audience, Stotler? It's very rude and impolite.
This house was built in 1937?
And it's way down the
Okay, I'm getting it. Okay.
Mr. Malloy asserted that he and his wife would lose privacy if the garage were built step back and toward the rear of the property. But in his own papers, which I dog-eared one of the pages of the prior construction, the most southerly part of the prior construction was coextensive with the back line of their pool deck. And so this new construction is less intrusive than what previously existed. Granted, there were no windows on that side, but there could have been. But structurally, it was coextensive with the rear line of their pool deck. And so they may have felt that they had more privacy because there was a shear wall that existed before the fire. The proposed construction is much more aesthetic in its layout and its design. So regarding the Tuscan style that has been selected, that is actually a preferred style by the Design Review Committee of the city. So we attempted to match what the city's expressed preferences were for style. The cosmetics or the face of the structure can be changed if there were a desire to do so, but we made the attempt to match what the city has expressed as its preferred view of this house should look like. The arguments about whether or not something might be redeveloped or reconstructed at a later point in time, and I think the photos having to do with 300 Brockmont, which is a below-grade house. It's a house that, by current standards, would never be approved because it is a below grade. It's totally inconsistent with the neighborhood. It's a house that is under-maintained. It's a house with a sagging garage roof that has no garage door on it, and Thank you.
I mean the mayor's house. The mayor's house is the one you're talking about. Laura Friedman's house.
I don't know who lives there,
Yes,
but I'm
it's the
talking.
mayor's
I'm talking about the house.
It's okay. Let him proceed, please.
But regardless, if it's the mayor's house or the president's house, it's a house that is not congruent with the neighborhood. It doesn't have a garage door. It has open materials stacked in the garage that are viewable by the public. And you take that house, and if it were to be reconstructed in a market, open market, a new buyer could reasonably get several thousand more square feet than it is presently constructed. And the point is that for folks that are arguing that they want to maintain the status quo, for that position to be intellectually honest, they should be willing to deed restrict their house or their property to the configured size consideration and not seek to have the benefit of the rising desirability in the future if someone wanted to modify it. So in that context, we made every effort to develop a attractive house, one that is not inconsistent with the neighborhood. If there is any consistency throughout the neighborhood, it is not outrageous in size. It's modest in its scope. It's modest in its context. It's modest in its character in relation to the usability and without being a dominant house in the neighborhood in relation to the row of houses up on Kenmont that are very large, and in the sense of how they take advantage of the view line. So, in that regard, we request that you look at the facts. Look at the facts of this house that's being proposed in relation to a sub-neighborhood within the overall city of Glendale, the desirability of adding to the housing stock that is in short supply, the desirability of utilizing a site that has some difficulties to it because of the change in legal standards that had originally applied to it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I would like to have that thumb drive, the photos on that as part of the record.
Okay. Did you? No, he gave you a rebuttal. Is there do you have one additional comment?
Just two additional comments.
Okay, you can have 2 minutes.
Okay. I just wanted to respond to Mr. Malloy's concern. I want to clarify one issue for Mr. Malloy because he may not understand this. He indicates that our use of the existing foundation is a huge financial benefit to the developer. There's no financial benefit to us at all because we're building a new foundation inside of that. So it doesn't save us any money. We still have to build a foundation. Secondly, he's provided. I haven't seen the documents he provided, but the primary concern is the privacy infringement on the rear yard. I have a couple of additional documents for you here, Ms. Stotler, that basically show exactly what the line of sight would be from that small deck area.
Okay.
On the back of the house.
Okay.
To his property. This is the proposed home. This is the small deck. This represents a 6-foot man to scale on this. This is the garage roof for the garage that happens to be set back, 18 foot. This person standing on the outside edge of that deck would actually be standing at this point. The point that they'd look across to that yard would be at the back corner of their pool.
Okay.
Okay, so yes, they'd be able to see from this point beyond on that lot, but they'd also be looking across 14 or 15 foot of rooftop area. Here, they'd be looking across this rooftop area, which is what this demonstrates. So their line of sight wouldn't begin until their vision passes that edge of that rooftop. This is what that line of sight would look like.
Okay.
Somebody standing on that deck or standing in a window in that master bedroom here cannot see into that backyard, cannot see that pool, and can definitely not see the bedroom windows and windows on on the lower level of that home.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thanks.
And the last issue was in regard to responding to Mr. Phillips' concern. He talks about this particular home being built, and it's such a large structure that it's going to block his view of the ridge line. Actually, the ridge line is north of us, and actually north of his home, not west of his home, which is where we're going to be located. And I'm not sure that there's a provision in the municipal code that says, that the view from my home should be protected so that when I look out from my home, I shouldn't see any other home around me. I just wanted to clarify that the ridgeline this home won't block his ridgeline view because the ridgeline view is actually north of both of us. He's actually, two lots east of us.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Just want to confirm that everybody has had a chance to speak. We've heard presentations from the applicant, testimony from the public. We've had rebuttal. Is there anybody else who hasn't already spoken who wishes to speak? Seeing none, therefore, I just want to clarify that although the staff report did not include an analysis of the hillside development review policy, we have heard the presentation from the applicant regarding conformance of his proposal with the hillside development review policy, and we've also heard testimony from the public regarding the hillside development review policy. In addition to the staff report that was provided with all the findings, we've heard findings made by the applicant, and we've also heard findings and concerns with findings raised by the public. So therefore, I don't see any sections of the code that were not addressed in this hearing. I will therefore close this hearing, take this item under submission, and I will be preparing a decision. And there are no further items on this agenda. This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you for coming.